She was standing outside his locker room, 2 coffees in her hands, wearing her favorite jacket. That's when she heard them laughing about the bet. $5,000 to make the billionaire's daughter fall in love. The coffee hit the floor. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just disappeared. They called her the Ice Queen, not because she was cruel, but because she kept everyone at a distance. No friends, no scandals, no cracks in the armor. Young Soo-Min built walls instead of friendships. Trusted logic over feelings. It worked. Until Mateo Rivera walked into her life. Before we dive into this story, if you love stories about love, heartbreak, and the kind of betrayal that changes you forever, hit the like button right now. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And drop a comment telling us if you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, and if you think people deserve second chances. Now, let's begin. Thornfield University, where America's elite send their children to build empires, not friendships. And at the center of whispered gossip and envious glares walked Young Soo-Min, 22 years old, breathtakingly beautiful and utterly alone. The daughter of a billionaire tech mogul, Soo-Min had everything money could buy. Designer clothes that cost more than most students' tuition. A penthouse apartment overlooking the city, a black card with no limit. But wealth, she learned, was a double-edged sword. It bought you designer handbags and luxury cars, but it couldn't buy you genuine human connection. They called her the Ice Queen, not because she was cruel, but because she'd learned to build walls. High walls, impenetrable walls, because when you're worth billions, everyone wants something from you. The other students kept their distance, some out of intimidation, others out of jealousy. Rumors followed her like shadows, that her father had bought her acceptance, that she paid others to do her work, that she looked down on everyone from her ivory tower. None of it was true, but Soo-Min had stopped defending herself years ago. Let them think what they wanted. At least their disdain was honest. It was better than fake friendship with ulterior motives. She found solace in the things that couldn't betray her. Her sketchbook, filled with fashion designs, the quiet corner of the campus cafe where she could disappear into her thoughts, the late nights in the design studio where she was just another student chasing a dream, not a billionaire's daughter carrying the weight of expectations. And then there was Mateo Rivera. 6'2", the university's star basketball player, with a smile that could light up a room and a reputation that preceded him. Where Soo-Min was isolation, Mateo was gravitation. People orbited around him, teammates, admirers, friends who weren't really friends but wanted to be close to his light. He was everything she wasn't, popular, beloved, seemingly effortless in his charm. Their worlds should never have collided, but fate, or perhaps something darker, had other plans. It happened on a Tuesday night. The team had just crushed their rivals, and the locker room buzzed with that electric post-victory energy. Adrenaline still pumping, egos riding high. The kind of night where bad decisions dress themselves up as brilliant ideas. Between laughs and celebratory shoves, someone mentioned her. The Ice Queen. That girl who walked through campus like she owned it, which, technically, her father probably did. "I bet you can't make the Ice Queen fall for you," Diego said, that troublemaker grin spreading across his face. $5,000 says even golden boy Mateo can't melt that fortress. The locker room went quiet, all eyes on Mateo, waiting. Mateo should have said no, should have laughed it off, should have walked away. But pride is a dangerous thing, especially when you've never failed at anything. Especially when you're 23 years old and invincible, surrounded by friends watching, waiting to see if the legend would accept the challenge. He shook on it. 3 months. Make Young Soo-Min fall in love with him by winter formal. Mateo's approach was calculated, subtle. He started appearing in her spaces, the library corner where she studied, the cafe where she sketched, always with a plausible reason, never too aggressive. Soo-Min noticed, of course. She wasn't naive, but there was something different about him. He didn't ask about her father, didn't mention her wealth. He asked about her designs, about the books she was reading, about her. It was unexpected and dangerously disarming. Days turned into weeks. The library meetings became routine, then anticipated. Then the highlight of Soo-Min's day, though she'd never admit it out loud. Mateo discovered that behind the ice was fire. Soo-Min was brilliant, not just book-smart, but creative, passionate, funny in a dry, understated way that caught him off guard. She saw the world through a designer's eye, finding beauty in unexpected places. She challenged him, didn't worship him like the others, and somehow that made him want to be better. And Soo-Min began to thaw. For the first time since coming to Thornfield, she felt something shift inside her chest. Something warm and terrifying and wonderful. Mateo brought her coffee without being asked, remembering she took it black with just a hint of cinnamon. He remembered small details she'd mentioned in passing, her favorite fabric texture, the designer she admired, the childhood memory of her grandmother teaching her to sew. He showed up to her small fashion exhibition when no one else did, sitting alone in that empty auditorium, watching her present with pride shining in his eyes. The walls she'd spent years building began to crumble, brick by brick. And behind those walls was a girl who desperately wanted to be loved for who she was, not what she had. It happened on a rooftop. The design building's roof, Soo-Min's secret sanctuary, where she went to think, to sketch, to breathe away from the judgment and whispers. It was her safe space, her fortress of solitude. She'd never brought anyone there before. But somehow, Mateo had found her. It was an October evening. The city lights were beginning to twinkle below like fallen stars. She was working on a new collection, her pencil flying across the page with an intensity that made her seem almost otherworldly, completely lost in creation. "You okay?" Mateo asked softly, not wanting to break her concentration but needing to know she was all right. He'd been looking for her, worried when she wasn't in her usual spots. She looked up, surprised but not displeased. "I'm always okay here," she said, gesturing to the view, the sketchbook, the solitude. "This is where I come to remember who I am when everyone else wants me to be someone else." He moved closer, careful, like approaching something wild and precious. His eyes fell on her sketches, pages and pages of gorgeous designs, each one more stunning than the last. Evening gowns that looked like they were made from moonlight, suits with architectural precision, dresses that somehow captured emotion in fabric form. "You're incredible," he breathed. Soo-Min felt something crack open inside her chest. No one had ever looked at her work like that. "You really think so?" she asked quietly, vulnerability creeping into her voice. "Or are you just being nice?" "I think you're the most talented person I've ever met," Mateo said honestly. "And I think the fashion world has no idea what's coming for them." And when she looked up at him, really looked at him, something shifted in the air between them. Something inevitable and terrifying and absolutely right. The space between them felt electric, charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. Soo-Min made the decision. She leaned in and kissed him. The kiss was soft, tentative, and absolutely devastating in its tenderness. The city disappeared. The world narrowed to just this, his lips on hers, his hand coming up to cup her face, her fingers curling into his shirt. Time stopped, or maybe it finally started. When they pulled apart, both breathless, both trembling slightly, Soo-Min whispered words she'd never said to anyone outside her family. "I think I'm falling for you." And in that moment, Mateo Rivera felt his heart break even as it soared, because he realized with sudden, crushing clarity that he'd fallen too. Somewhere between the library conversations and the coffee deliveries and her rare, precious smiles, the bet had stopped being a bet. He'd fallen in love with her, actually, truly, terrifyingly in love. But the foundation of their relationship was built on a lie. And lies, no matter how deeply you bury them, always find their way to the surface. For 6 perfect weeks, Soo-Min knew what happiness felt like. She walked through campus differently now, not alone, but hand in hand with Mateo. The whispers changed from mockery to envy. Her designs improved, inspired by the colors of love, warm golds, soft pinks, deep passionate reds. She introduced him to her world of haute couture and artistic vision, dragging him to fabric stores where she'd explain the difference between silk charmeuse and silk chiffon, with such passion that he couldn't help but be captivated. He introduced her to his world of late-night diners and pick-up basketball games with people who didn't care about net worth, where she laughed so hard at his terrible trash talk that she nearly choked on her milkshake. They were building something beautiful, something neither had experienced before, something that felt like home. She told her father about him. "He's different, Appa," she'd said, her voice lighter than it had been in years. "He gets me." But Mateo carried the weight of the secret like stones in his pockets. Diego kept asking about the bet. His teammates would nudge him, grinning, asking when he'd collect his $5,000. Each time, Mateo brushed them off with increasing anger. "It's not like that anymore," he'd snap. "It's real." And it was. But reality built on deception is a house built on sand, and the tide was coming in. It was 1 week before winter formal, when Soo-Min's world ended. She'd gone to surprise Mateo after practice, carrying 2 coffees and wearing the smile that only he could put on her face. The smile that said, "I'm happy." She'd even dressed up a little, that black jacket he loved, her hair up the way he said made her look like a dream. She was thinking about winter formal, about the dress she was designing specifically for that night, about how perfect everything was. The locker room door was slightly ajar, and through it she heard voices, laughter, the easy camaraderie of teammates celebrating another win. And then words that would haunt her forever. "1 week left on the bet, golden boy." Diego's voice, loud and teasing. "You bringing the ice queen to formal or what? 5 grand says she's already planning the wedding." More laughter, raucous, cruel. The kind of laughter that comes easy when you don't know you're destroying someone. "Man, I can't believe she actually fell for it." Another voice, Carlos maybe. "That's cold, bro. Ice Queen got iced by the golden boy himself." Soo-Min's hand froze on the door handle. Time slowed. The world tilted on its axis. The coffee cup slipped from her other hand, hitting the ground in slow motion. She watched it fall, watched the lid pop off, watched the dark liquid splash across the linoleum floor like spilled ink, like blood. But she didn't hear it. She didn't hear anything except the rushing of blood in her ears and Mateo's voice, quieter than the others, defensive but damning. "Shut up, man. It's not like that anymore." But it was like that. Diego again, relentless. "You played her. Now you just caught feelings during the con. Happens to the best of us, bro, but a bet's a bet. You win, you collect." The world shattered. Every moment they'd shared, every laugh, every kiss, every whispered confession, every morning text, every late-night call, every time he'd said, "You're beautiful," or "You're talented," or "I love you," all of it replayed in her mind now tainted with the poison of betrayal. Every memory turned to ash. She'd been right all along. Love was a luxury she couldn't afford. Trust was a weapon people used to destroy you. What a stupid, naive, desperate fool she'd been. She didn't confront them, didn't make a scene, didn't scream or cry or demand explanations. She simply backed away, silent as a ghost, and disappeared into the November cold. For 2 days, Mateo couldn't find her. She didn't answer calls, didn't respond to texts, blocked him on every platform. Security wouldn't let him into her penthouse. It was as if Soo-Min had vanished. But she hadn't vanished. She was in her design studio, surrounded by sketches, every single one inspired by him, by them, by the love she'd thought was real. And one by one, she tore them apart. Each rip was a memory destroyed. Each shred was a piece of her heart she was trying to extract. But you can't tear out love like pages from a book. It stays, embedded in your soul like shrapnel. When Mateo finally found her, it was late at night. The studio was a wasteland of destroyed dreams, torn paper, scattered pencils, smudged charcoal everywhere. And in the center of the destruction sat Soo-Min, her eyes red but dry. She'd run out of tears. "Soo-Min," he breathed, relief and fear mixing in his voice. "I've been looking everywhere." She looked up at him and he flinched, because the warmth that had been in her eyes, the warmth he'd fought so hard to kindle, was gone, replaced by ice so cold it burned. "Was I really that pathetic?" she asked, her voice eerily calm. "That you needed a $5,000 incentive to pretend to love me?" Mateo tried to explain, tried to make her understand that yes, it had started as a bet, but it had become real, that he loved her, that every moment they'd shared had been genuine. But how do you prove authenticity when your foundation is fraud? How do you convince someone to trust you when you've already betrayed them in the most fundamental way? When were you going to tell me? Soo-Min asked, her voice breaking despite her attempts to stay cold. After winter formal, after we slept together, on our wedding day, when exactly did you plan to mention that our entire relationship was built on a dare? Mateo had no answer, because there was no good answer. You said you saw me, Soo-Min continued, standing now, facing him with all the dignity she could muster. You said I wasn't just my father's money to you, but that's all I ever was, wasn't I? A challenge. A conquest. The Ice Queen to be melted for $5,000 and bragging rights. That's not fair, Mateo started. Fair, Soo-Min laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You want to talk about fair? I opened up to you, I let you in. I told you things I've never told anyone. I gave you pieces of myself I didn't know I had to give. And it was all. What? Entertainment, a game. I love you, Mateo said desperately. I know I don't deserve it, but I love you, the real you. Let me prove it. No, the word was final, absolute. You don't get to do this. You don't get to break me and then ask for the chance to put me back together. I'm not a project, Mateo. I'm not a bet you can win with enough effort. I'm done. The news spread through campus like wildfire. The bet, the betrayal, the Ice Queen's humiliation. It was the scandal of the semester, better than any reality show because it was real and someone was really suffering. Soo-Min stopped going to classes, stopped leaving her apartment. The walls she'd so carefully dismantled were rebuilt overnight, higher and stronger than before. She'd learned her lesson. She wouldn't forget it again. Mateo tried everything. Letters slipped under her door, all returned unopened. Texts to her, begging for just 5 minutes. He stood outside her building in the rain like some tragic romance hero, but this wasn't a romance. This was a tragedy, and tragedies don't have happy endings. 3 weeks after the truth came out, Soo-Min made her decision. She stood in her luxury apartment, surrounded by packed designer luggage, and called her father. The conversation was short. He heard the brokenness in her voice and asked no questions, just made arrangements. Paris, the fashion program at Parsons. The fresh start she desperately needed. Far away from Mateo Rivera and Thornfield University and the memory of the girl who'd been stupid enough to believe in love. Are you sure, baby? Her father asked gently. You've worked so hard there, you're so close to graduating. I can't stay here, Appa, she whispered. Sometimes, her father said, his voice thick with emotion, hatting that he couldn't protect his daughter from this kind of pain. The bravest thing you can do is walk away. Start over. Build something new from the ashes. So that's what she would do. Walk away. Build a new life. Become someone who never made this mistake again. The Ice Queen wasn't a name they'd given her. It was armor she'd chosen. And she'd wear it proudly from now on. Winter formal came and went. Mateo attended alone, wearing a suit and carrying a corsage he'd bought for a girl who would never wear it. Diego tried to joke, guess I won the bet, huh? But the words died when Mateo grabbed him by the collar, his eyes blazing with something between rage and despair. There was no bet, Mateo said, his voice deadly quiet. There was never a bet. I fell in love with her, and I lost the only person who ever mattered because I was too proud and too stupid to see what I had until it was gone. He left the formal early, driving to Soo-Min's apartment building one last time. The lights were off, and Mateo Rivera realized that some mistakes can't be fixed with apologies or grand gestures or time. Some mistakes cost you everything. Soo-Min stood in the private airport terminal, designer coat, sunglasses hiding eyes that had cried themselves empty. She carried only a small bag and her design portfolio. Everything else would be shipped later, or didn't matter anymore. The boarding call came. It was time. And then, like some cosmic joke, Mateo burst through the doors, breathless, desperate, looking like he'd run through fire to get there. Soo-Min, he gasped, Please don't go like this. She removed her sunglasses slowly, revealing eyes that had once looked at him with love and now held only hollow sadness. I love you, Mateo pleaded, moving closer. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know I destroyed what we had, but I love you, the real you. Let me spend the rest of my life proving it. Let me show you that not everyone will hurt you. But you already did, Soo-Min interrupted, her voice breaking. You already hurt me, Mateo. And that's the thing about trust. Once it's broken forever. I can't look at you without seeing the lie. Then I'll wait, Mateo said desperately. However long it takes. 10 years, 20 years, I'll wait for you to forgive me. I'll wait for a second chance. Soo-Min smiled then, a sad, broken smile that shattered what was left of Mateo's heart. Don't wait for me, she whispered. Don't put your life on hold for someone who can't forgive you. You wanted to know the real me, Mateo. The real me knows when something is broken beyond repair. And we're shattered glass, beautiful once. But you can't put shattered glass back together without cutting yourself on the pieces. The final boarding call echoed through the terminal. Soo-Min put her sunglasses back on armor against the world and walked toward the gate. She paused once, looked back at the boy who'd made her believe in fairy tales and then destroyed them, and then kept walking. Mateo stood in the empty terminal long after her plane took off, a silhouette of regret and what-ifs. He pulled out his phone, looking at her contact photo, her rare, genuine smile directed at him and him alone. He'd never delete it. It was all he had left of the best thing he'd ever had and the worst thing he'd ever done. 3 years later. It was Paris Fashion Week, the most prestigious runway in the world, and on every billboard, every magazine cover, every fashion blog, one name dominated: Soo-Min. She'd become what she was always meant to be, one of the most sought-after designers in the world. Her collections were instant sellouts. Her vision was revolutionary. She'd built an empire on her own terms. The Ice Queen had become a legend. And in the crowd of hundreds watching her collection debut, surrounded by celebrities and fashion elite, stood Mateo Rivera. Older now, a professional basketball player with a promising career, still carrying the weight of the worst mistake of his life. Their eyes met across the distance. 3 years, thousands of miles, countless regrets. She paused on the runway, just for a heartbeat, just long enough for him to see that she recognized him, that she remembered. And then she kept walking, because that's what Soo-Min Yun did now. She kept walking. She kept surviving. She kept building a life where no one could hurt her again. But as the lights dimmed and the crowd erupted in applause, a single question hung in the air. Can broken glass ever be made whole? Can shattered trust ever be rebuilt? Can a love born from lies ever transform into truth? Some stories don't have endings. They have ellipses, 3 dots that stretch into infinity, filled with possibility and pain in equal measure. This is one of those stories.